guess I'll record to my computer. Okay, so welcome. Let's start with preheating our ovens to 350. All right, while our ovens are preheating, can we all, let's see, let's do an introduction, which you're welcome to opt out of. Let's say our names and one of our favorite things to cook. So I'll start. I'm Monica, and I make a lot of soups on a regular basis, and I love trying new things.
My name is Bill, Evergreen graduate. I like to cook Swedish food.
Nice.
My name is Em, and I like to cook chili.
My name is Fauzia, and I like to cook Indian food.
Go ahead, Beth.
Go ahead. My name is Nina, and I like to cook soups.
My name's Elijah. I like to cook pancakes.
I'm Casey. I like to cook anything with pesto.
My name is Susan, and I like to cook just about anything, especially when I'm cooking with other people.
My name's Ellie, and I really like to cook some ramen.
My name's Carly, and I like to cook chicken.
My name's Laura, and I like to cook soups.
My name's Amelia, and I've been making a lot of spam fried rice recently.
Hey, I'm Sarah, and I love cooking with students locally grown organic produce that we grow. Again, thank you, Monica.
And Beth, you have your hand raised.
I wasn't sure how one was called on, but I like to cook soups also. I really enjoyed cooking Asian foods and just starting to cook Indian foods.
Nice. Well, I like this popcorn style, so let's keep that up. Is there anyone else who wants to introduce themselves? All right. Anyone reaching for their unmute? Okay. Well, let's get started. My oven's still preheating, but I'm going to grab my chicken thighs. And if any of you are using a non-meat substitute, if you're vegetarian, you're welcome to grab whatever that is as well. And I'm actually going to do a little cooking hack, and I'm going to roast my chicken thighs in the same pan I'm going to make my soup in. And then I'm going to use the schmaltz from the chicken to saute I'm going to pull the chicken out to cool and use the schmaltz to saute my onions and garlic when we start the chicken soup. And it's going to taste delicious. It's going to add a lot of flavor to the soup. So
Monica, please define schmaltz.
Schmaltz is chicken fat. It's the Yiddish word for chicken fat.
Thank you.
So I'm just gonna pull my chicken out and leave all that rich goodness in my pan for sauteing the onions and garlic, the aromatics, the ginger. So everybody grab your chicken thighs, grab your oil. I'm gonna be using olive oil for this soup. And just put enough oil on to coat the chicken thighs. Sprinkle some salt over them, or if you're a measurer, maybe a teaspoon of salt on them. And I have the skin on bone-in chicken thighs, so I'm gonna put the skin side up so that the meat stays moist. And I'm gonna throw them in my oven. All right, now we're gonna start chopping. I know some of you pre-chop, so this is the time you get to relax. I'm gonna start with onions, and I'm gonna chop both onions for both soups so that we save some time. And then my other cooking hack that I wanted to share with you all, and this is why I called it efficient soup making, because like the schmaltz, I like to use things that commonly get thrown out. So I'm gonna take the juicy ends of my onions. I'm gonna pull the dry skin off, and they're going into my stock bag. And all the stock that I use today, all the broth is gonna be my own homemade broth that I make out of vegetable ends, whatever, like if I roast a chicken, I throw the carcass in there. I think I've got some shrimp skins, like whatever is going to be luscious, add flavor and healthy things to your stock. You want to throw those in there, and then you're throwing away a lot less stuff. So I'm pulling out a couple of my homemade stocks, and I save them in these yogurt containers, so it's a quart, so it's kind of the perfect amount, the same amount you would buy for a soup. So while we chop our onions, I would love to hear you all's cooking hacks. What do you do to be efficient in soup making or any other thing?
Monica, one suggestion. I think we're working on everyone having the recipe so that we can switch back to actually be able to see you.
Oh, okay. I wasn't able to, I could probably put it into the chat, maybe in smaller things. So, and then I'm happy after the class to email out the recipe.
This is Nina, and I'm going to suggest that if you're in Zoom, you can go up to the upper right-hand corner and choose to be able to see the screen and Monica at the same time.
But it might be nice to have me in a bigger.
Yes, please.
Oh, yes, always.
So what should we do? Let's see.
Does anyone not have the recipes? Because one suggestion, Monica, is that we can all do screenshots.
Oh, that's
Or
a good idea.
or we can find our own ways to get the recipes. I will provide those to Evergreen students so that if we could use a chat, if anybody needs the recipes, I'll work with you to get them so that everyone could watch what Monica's doing on the full screen.
Perfect. Thank you. Chat to Sarah if you still need the recipe. Thanks, Sarah.
Yep, no worries.
All righty. Great. All righty. Is that better?
Yes.
All right. So we're chopping our onions, and you all are telling me your cooking hacks. What do you do to make things efficient and better?
I'm saying this as I'm crying, but I heard that if you put a wet paper towel down on your cutting board, the onions won't burn your eyes.
I like that.
I have found that if I cut the root end of the onion off first, then the rest of the onion doesn't spray quite as badly. I do that and I rarely cry.
I use pressed sunflower oil instead of sunflower oil out of the bottle because it helps me measure how much I need much easier.
Does everybody have their chicken or chicken substitute in the oven?
Yep.
Nice. What are some other things that people do to make their soups delicious or efficient? I know we all cook, so. Okay, now we're gonna cut enough garlic for both soups. So 8 cloves of garlic. And then we're gonna cut ginger for both soups as well. So, or we're gonna microplane ginger or grate it however, or you could just chop it fine, however you wanna do it. So about an 8-inch piece of ginger, and then we'll use half for one soup and half for the other. While we're doing that, do you all want to tell us more about, for those of us that aren't in the Evergreen program, can you tell us more about taste?
I can talk a little bit. I am crying severely currently, so excuse me for that. But we are almost fully remote now, except for Mondays, where we're able to work on the farm in person. And aside from that, we've been having tasting labs, and this is one of them, where we have, I think it's Wednesdays usually now. So yeah, we get to cook and have fun, and we've had a lot of fun experiences, but I think we've all been looking forward to this soup lab a lot. So yeah, thanks for having us here.
Oh, thanks for being here. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, and you guys should also chime in. I mean, I think, yeah, being fully remote has definitely changed our class a bit, but it's nice because we can accommodate with everything that we've been doing before. So.
I have a question for Casey.
Yeah.
What have been the best things you've learned from working in the class to learn about the cooking and taste and growing? What has made the greatest impact on you?
I think there's a lot, and I think the one that comes to my mind the most when we're working in class and not on the farm, it's probably some of our literature that we're reading. Farming While Black has definitely resonated with me a lot, just because it's a lot of history and context behind what we're doing now, and like where we've got a lot of what we know from. So I think that book in specific has definitely resonated with me a lot, and I bet it will be different for other students too. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
My favorite book is Taste What You're Missing. And I like the way it's divided up because the first few chapters in the first part of the book were about the senses. And then the second half of the book is divided into the different like tastes and taste profiles. And I think it's been really cool to do two quarters in a row, and the first one to learn about how our senses affect our taste, and then to learn about the tastes themselves. I think has been really, really cool.
I really have liked that when we do cooking labs, it's like new things that I wouldn't usually want to like maybe not have the confidence to try at home, but then like we'll just be like, let's make kimchi or pickles, and I learn like all these new things that I wouldn't normally spend the time or money on to like learn, and then I get to do it for school, and it's really exciting. And now I know how to make pickles, and that's really cool.
I've been learning a lot of great recipes off of TikTok lately. And what's cool about that is that there's people from all over the world sharing their recipes. So I'm making things that I wasn't familiar with how to make, and it's a lot easier to watch somebody doing it, you know, like we're doing right now, than to just read a recipe. So I've really been enjoying that interface.
Well, I was wanting to back up to the onion discussion. I was thinking about one of the things that helps me is just keeping my knives sharp.
Oh God.
You're not crushing that texture and releasing all those oils as much. And so I don't have super great knives, but I do have this little thing that's a knife sharpener that just hangs in my kitchen. And this is the business end here. And this is a hand guard. So you hold it like this and you set your knife on top of your counter this way. And then you just run this down your knife 5 or 6 times, no biggie. But it does a really nice job of sharpening the knife. And these are not expensive, maybe, I don't know, $10 or $12 at the most. there's different variations of these for things like shovels and tools and things. Okay, so you have a very similar, yeah. And so I sharpen my knives, not all the time, but when I feel like it's not cutting as well as it was, I bet each knife gets sharpened, I don't know, once every week and a half or so. And it sharpens my big knives, my little knives, any knives. But I can really tell when it's not sharp because it tends to crush things. Like think of green onions, don't slice well when it's not sharp. But I think for onions, just having a really sharp knife really cuts down on the volatile oils that are released. And it's just more pleasurable to cut with a great knife or a sharp knife.
Boy, do I agree with you, Nina. It's makes such a difference. You know, I do a lot of chopping at the co-op. For those of you, I think most of you know what I do and why I got invited to do this class, but I make soups for the Olympia Food Co-op soup and salad bar. And we make some very good soups there. If you haven't been there to try them out, come do so because people rave. And they're good, they're healthy, they're made with organic produce. Some of it is delivered by the farms that morning and we're turning it into soup that afternoon. So they're awfully healthy. So I'm gonna try fresh turmeric in my chicken soup because we have this gorgeous locally grown turmeric at the co-op. It looks like Hawaiian ginger. It's just big and luscious and fresh looking. And I usually use powdered, but we'll see if that makes a difference.
Are they growing that in greenhouses?
I don't know. I'm assuming. I don't really know that much about turmeric growing. Does anybody here know?
Yeah, both turmeric and ginger have gotten funding from USDA. So I know farmers in the Midwest who are growing turmeric and ginger in greenhouses because those are crops that are high value and are usually imported, exported thousands of miles. So there's actually quite, you can call it a fad, a new trend. And of course, the politics of growing tropical plants under snowy conditions, I leave that for people to sort out. But there's both, of course, if you're in the tropics, you don't necessarily have to have it under a greenhouse, but a lot that's being grown in the US is in greenhouses or at least under cover to increase the growing season.
Interesting, thanks. Yeah. All right, so has everybody got their onions, garlic, ginger, and fresh turmeric if you have it chopped? Ready to go? Anybody need more time? All right, then we are going to go ahead and start with, oh, I forgot mushrooms. I like to do the mushrooms with the aromatics because I like them to have plenty of cooking time. So let's include our mushrooms. So you probably figured out while our chicken's cooking, we're going to start with the vegetarian soup. So I'm using shiitake mushrooms. I know I said portobello or cremini or whites or whatever you like, but I got some nice shiitakes I'm gonna use. And that's the thing about cooking is it's great to try variations. I always, often will do a recipe like it's written the first time and then decide what I would like different to my tastes. And it's fun to play around that way. other people have things that they like to do around recipes, making changes?
I don't eat peanuts, and so I'm going to use tahini in place of the peanut butter.
That's a great idea. I think that'll taste delicious.
I feel like learning how to make your own stock, either meat stock or vegetable stock, is like super important and satisfying and better in every way.
Agreed. Do you make your own stock?
Yeah, I do.
Awesome.
Yeah, most of the time, unless there's some sort of emergency where I need soup right away.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I have this giant bag of vegetable ends. And so when I run out of the stock that I have in my freezer, I will throw all the vegetable ends, the carcasses, the whole cabash that I've been saving in my freezer into a stock pot and just cook it overnight. Usually I just simmer it, you know, for most of the day or all of the night, and then strain it out, and you have this, add a little salt and pepper, you have this rich, delicious, delectable broth. Are there any things, Elijah, that you do different with yours?
No, that's about it. Yeah, I don't usually make big batches. I often make about enough for whatever soup I'm making, or if I cook a chicken,
Nice.
I'll make stock out of that, and there's a couple quart pan, and then pretty much use it right away.
Nice. Yeah. Then you don't have to freeze it. All right, so let's get our oil into our soup pot.
I find the pressure cooker, if you have a pressure cooker, stock is great in a pressure cooker.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, in under an hour, you got stock.
Does everybody know about our upcoming class, Instapot cooking with Tara Turner? So
I signed up for that one.
Nice.
I did too.
Awesome. So if you do want to learn more about I'm going to take it because we have an Instapot that I don't use at all. So
I use mine all the time. I used it last night. I boil eggs in it all the time. My husband likes to take boiled eggs to work for lunch. And so every Monday morning, there have to be at least 5 boiled eggs ready for him to take for the week.
Nice. All righty, so let's put half our onions into our pot with our oil and half of our garlic and half of our ginger.
Is this for the chicken soup, or does it matter? Or
this one is for the vegetable soup.
okay.
And then all of our mushrooms. We're going to put that on medium to medium high. Let's go ahead and put our salt in. let that start simmering and filling our kitchens with a beautiful aroma. And then while that's happening, we're gonna chop our squash. So the folks in the taste class are using, and they kindly shared with me this beautiful Georgia candy roaster squash that they grew in the organic garden. It's beautiful. I'm very excited to try it. And then folks will also have butternut squash. So I'm gonna get my vegetable peeler.
Did you say to only add half of the onions, garlic, and ginger?
Yeah, so we chopped both onions, and half is gonna be for one soup and half is gonna be the other. We chopped 8 garlic cloves, half are gonna go in this soup, half in the other. We chopped an 8-inch piece of ginger, same thing, half and half. But then the mushrooms are all going in this soup. Go ahead and peel your squash. I'm just using a vegetable peeler. And then I provided a bonus recipe for those using, so those of us with the Georgia candy roaster squash have just enough for our soup, but those of you that bought a big butternut are gonna have leftovers. So I provided a bonus recipe that's one of my favorite things to make. It's a butternut ragu, and it is delicious over warm polenta or noodles or rice or whatever you like. Even wilted spinach would be delicious. My kitchen's smelling delicious. How about you all's?
Smelling very good.
So tell us more about the class. What's kind of the overarching, I mean, clearly it's about food and growing food and making food. What are some of the overarching themes?
I'd say, well, one, everything you said is true, and then it's like, and so much more. Like, it's hard to even talk about because we cover such a wide variety, in my opinion. But I would say a summary could be something like how taste and flavor and food affects us in the world and our ancestors and the future. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. pulling the seeds out of my squash, the pith. When I made the soup before, so I took these recipes. These are both soups I make at work at the co-op a lot, and I had, but you know, we use like, I don't know, like 20 pounds of squash or 20 pounds of chicken, and we make a giant pot of soup that's supposed to last a couple days. And so it's very different just doing it in our own kitchen. So I had to do a sample to get the ingredients down. And of course, you should play with the ingredients and change them to what you like. But when I made it the first time, I roasted my butternut squash seeds, and they were so delicious. I ate them up in a couple days. And one of the tricks that I've learned about cooking squash and pumpkin seeds is that I used to make them, and they were always like unpleasantly chewy and not crisp and delicious. And then they would just turn into like, I don't know, something kind of unchewable in my mouth. But then I learned that if you dry them completely, whether you just let them sit until they're totally dry, or you can put them on a dehydration level or the lowest level in your oven, and just let them get totally dry. And then I massage olive oil or some oil into them. And often I just use salt and pepper because they're just so delicious the way they are. But you can also put chili powder, chilies, or whatever kind of spices you like on them. And they're so good. So if you want to save your seeds, you're welcome. Does anybody else have any seed roasting hacks?
Well, one of the things that I'd share is to get seeds out of squash easily rather than spooning it out. If you're wanting to keep the seeds, rather than spooning it out, I find it easier to open up the squash and then sort of force them out with your fingers. Sort of rub your fingers on the squash and force the seeds out. And then you have very little separation, you know, that you don't hardly have to clean them, because once they're out of the squash, like with a spoon, it's kind of hard to separate the seeds from the fibrous stuff. And so if you run your fingers along the inside of the squash and just sort of force the seeds out, they come out almost clean. Much easier job. And then you take the fibrous stuff out with a spoon.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's super helpful, because I'm always in there like getting all those fibers off, and it is a pain.
Yes, I love that technique, and it should be really helpful for students working with the Georgia candy roaster, because it's open pollinated. And the suggestion, I hope everybody was in class when that was distributed. You can save those seeds and plant them, which I'm hoping some of them you will save and you will plant. So the idea of being able to lay them out as just suggested, that's a really great idea. Because again, to plant them and have them germinate, they need to dry completely.
Nice. And the candy roaster seeds are really fat. I don't know if y'all can see them, but they're very plump seeds. So I am definitely. What?
Can we see how you're cutting the squash?
Yeah, I'm cubing it. So just in small cubes.
Thank you.
My aromatics are getting to the point where I am ready to add my green curry, my Thai green curry. So what did I say? Well, I said that depending on what you like. So Thai green curry is a little spicy. So if you don't like spice, just put a teaspoon in, and just to get the flavor. If you do like spice, add a couple teaspoons, a few teaspoons. This is kind of one of those things where it's very different for different people. And then I'm also going to chop a jalapeno and throw that in because I love a lot of spice.
For those folks in the class, I would love to hear what you think about this particular squash, how it was to grow and the flavor and what you like about it, what you don't like. As a farmer or as a gardener, I'm always interested in great winter squashes.
I want to take the pressure off. I love that question. And it would have been last year's program who actually planted the seeds and grew it who could answer that question, because this year's program is the recipient of the fall harvest. So that's why I'm hoping that this year's students, all of us who are getting to eat what last year's students planted and grew for us, will in fact pass it forward for next year's program. But Beth, I'm curious, can we flip it around? What are your favorite squashes to grow and why?
Actually, one of my very favorites is sweet meat, which is kind of a blue-gray looking pumpkin, but it's a squash. It's largish, like a smaller pumpkin. I live alone, so I don't grow it as much because it does take up a lot of room, being a rangy squash. And they're really, really big. I mean, for one person. So I don't grow it as much as I used to. And I will say one of my favorite things, in desperation to use it the first year, we grew it a long time ago. There was so much of it and we had many. We invented, at the time, I assumed we invented squash pizza. So just making up the squash and using that for our tomato sauce and then whatever else. That was great. I love delicata, very sweet. And, you know, for one person, it's a couple, 3 meals. Spaghetti squash is probably my other very favorite. Again, they're kind of largish, I mean, sort of for one person, but I can eat a spaghetti squash in the better part of a week. The other thing I learned about spaghetti squashes is I used to cut them. So if this was the squash, I would always cut them this way. But I've recently learned to cut it this way into 2 oblong ends. Easier to take out the seeds. And number 2, you get much longer spaghetti strands if you're baking it that way. You set them up in the oven like this to bake, and just brush with a little oil, and I do herbies. But you get much longer strands going round than if you cut them in half. So anyway, I guess delicata, spaghetti, and sweetmeats. Oh, well, acorn, there's so many nice squashes. Oh my gosh. Acorn squashes are great.
Thank you.
I just did a recipe where I cut the top off the acorn squash, pulled out the insides, threw in a tablespoon of wild rice and a few tablespoons of water and salt and pepper and a little maple syrup, I think it was, and a little bit of oil, and just baked it. And the rice cooked inside the squash, and it was really delicious. We had that for dinner last night. So my aromatics are ready. They're soft, they're luscious, they're starting to brown a little bit. The mushrooms are nice and firm. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw my squash on top of that and then pour in my broth.
Monica, we'd like to see your pan.
Oh yeah, it's off camera, isn't it? It's just a Dutch oven. The squasher in there on top of my aromatics.
Thank you.
You bet. And then I'm gonna put my broth right in there with it. And I'm also gonna put like a couple cups of water in there. So the way I do it is I rinse out all the sediment in my broth container and my homemade stock and fill it about halfway. So I know it's 2 cups. And then you can vary the water based on, you know, how much squash you put in, how much, you know, so that it's the perfect soup consistency. Because we're going to be also adding some broccoli, tomatoes. I think that's it, right?
Also the coconut milk, Monica.
Oh, and the coconut milk. Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Oh, I love what Sarah said about delicata in the chat, that her children thought it was candy. It is so sweet and so delicious. I like the roasting it just in half. I slice it because you can eat the, you know, the skins, so you don't have to worry about peeling it. And for the deli, I do a brown butter sage. I put a little olive oil on the squash, and then I make a brown butter and add some fresh sage and let it sizzle in there, and then pour that over the squash and roast it. And it's one of my favorite things to eat. And you know, if you live alone, I have a toaster oven, so I'll just, you know, chop a delicata squash or a beet or something and roast it. I mean, I don't live alone, so I'm usually making big old things, but if I'm just having dinner by myself, it's so easy to throw stuff in my toaster oven. I don't have to heat up the oven and roast vegetables, and they're just so good roasted. That's my favorite way to eat vegetables, is roasted, because I feel like it brings out the flavor in such a nice way. How about other people? How do you like to eat your vegetables?
I like to play the game of how many vegetables can I fit into a meal without tasting them. And I find the best way is with my immersion blender and pasta sauce. I find that you can easily hide 4 servings of vegetables in a pasta sauce if you also have cheese.
Well put.
Are you trying to hide it from children?
No, I'm trying to hide it from me.
Oh.
I have a lot of issues with texture, which is why when I cut my squash, I also smooth the insides of my squash down so that I don't get the stringy texture. I don't like the texture of a lot of vegetables, and I find that once I blend them into things and I can't really tell they're there, I just don't have the issue anymore. Yeah. I like the flavor. I just don't want to eat it in its vegetable form.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I also stand by immersion blenders. They are, if you don't have an immersion blender, I love blended soups. I just love the way it just melds the flavors, and they're so useful. cooking, cooking professionally, it's as much about how things look. I mean, you want everything to taste delicious, but it also has to look delicious for people to want to buy it. So, yeah, it's I found that like Elijah, a lot of those, I mean, not Elijah, it was M. A lot of those blended pesto type things. I know Casey's a fan of pesto, but you can make pesto with like such a variety of vegetables. And if you make grains green, if you do like a green rice or a green quinoa, people eat that up and it's delicious. It really adds a lot of flavor to the grain. So let's bring our broth and with our squash and aromatics to a boil and our mushrooms. So if you put a lid on it, that kind of speeds it up. And we're gonna get that boiling, and then in the meantime, we're gonna chop our broccoli, our tomatoes. What are some other ways people like to eat vegetables?
I bought a bunch of cabbage recently, so I've been experimenting with like how many different ways to Sunday I can eat cabbage. I tried to quick pickle it, but I was cooking with a friend and we had different opinions on how to quick pickle the cabbage, and they wanted me to do a hot brine, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted because I wanted it to taste more like a quick pickled onion, but it turned like very crowdy. And it's still good, but I was trying to do it for tacos and it didn't work out the way I wanted. And then I also like one time just very quickly sauteed some Napa cabbage leaves, and that was really, really good with like soy sauce. And I think I was cooking pork, so it was like in there too. And yeah, it was good.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, it's a commitment when you buy a head of cabbage. But I do love quick pickling. Because you maintain that crunch of the vegetables. So I love for breakfast this morning I had this purple daikon that is on a slice of baguette that's grown locally, and I love to chop these thin and throw them into a cold brine. Just vinegar, salt and sugar, and red chili flakes, of course, because I love the spice. And you have a pickle, like they're good to eat pretty much immediately. Anybody else have good pickling ideas?
I don't have any ideas, but pickled red onions is my challenge of the week. I have all the stuff for it now.
My daughter was a big pickled red onion fan, and I think she did I don't think she heated her brine. I think she just made a brine. In fact, I called her when I wanted to make pickled red onions at the co-op, and what did you put in there? And she just would put in like some allspice berries, like just different delicious flavors in there. And there was always a jar of pickled onions in our fridge.
What do we do when our stock is spoiling?
Okay, so are your broccoli and tomatoes chopped? Yeah, throw them in, and we're gonna have soup very soon. And go ahead and throw in your can of coconut milk as well. And with the broccoli, I throw away the tough bottom stem, but I chop, I'm sure all of you do this too, chop the stems and not just the florets, because the stems are crunchy and delicious and have a lot of yumminess in them.
For the person that was making the red onion quick pickles, that brine, when your onions are gone, I mean eaten up, that brine is a wonderful foundation for salad dressings. If you make your own dressings, they're really simple to make, but it's a wonderful vinegar foundation for your dressings.
Oh,
and then it's got all that great onion flavor in it too.
That's efficiency. I love that. That's a great idea. I've never done that. I'm going to do that from now on.
For the person that had the cabbage, I love finely shredded, just knife shredded, but just finely shredded cabbage in my green salads, you know, with lettuce. It just provides a little more hard crunch. And another way to use up that head of cabbage. And the good news about cabbage, it keeps forever in the fridge. Sometimes you have to slice off the edge of it if you've sliced it off before. I mean, been using part of it, but gosh, cabbage keeps 2 or 3 or 4 months in the fridge, a long, long time. So think of purple cabbage, you know, that restaurants often put in their salads. I use green cabbage the same way. It's just not as pretty, but great way to use some cabbage.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I will do that.
I'm rinsing my coconut milk can out with a little more water to add to my soup so I get all that deliciousness. Now we're gonna just let our soup simmer until the vegetables are soft. And let's pull our chicken out of the oven and temp it. If you don't have a thermometer, so if you have a thermometer, you want your chicken to be at 165. If you don't have a thermometer, some ways to tell if the juices run clear, not red. Any other chicken hacks people know?
I know that my chicken is done if the meat falls off the bone.
Yeah.
I shouldn't call it farming. It's really a backyard garden, but I've done it since I was 20, I guess. or so. So it's not a farm. It's probably a 20 by 20, or maybe 25 by 25 or so plot. So, and then I tuck things in here and there in the other gardens around my property. So, and it's just, I guess I have maybe a quarter of an acre. I mean, it's just a city lot, but an older lot. So it's a little larger.
That's fantastic. That sounds like you can probably grow a lot of stuff in there. So that's
Lots of fruit trees. So I often feel kind of pushed around by the seasons as the fruit comes on. And I rather enjoy it, you know, got to prune now, got to, you know, but it's fun.
That's
I like
cool. So my chicken's beautifully browned. It's temping in the 200s, so I know it's done. So I'm gonna pull it out of the pan. If you used a different pan to cook your chicken, don't dump that schmaltz. We're gonna use it to saute our aromatics. So I'm just gonna pull mine out and set it on a plate to cool. I'm going to scrape the little brown bits up, and then I'm going to put it on the burner.
Monica, I had a question with the tomatoes in the other soup. Did you take the seeds out of them?
No, I just chopped the little hard thing out of the top and just chopped them and threw them in.
That's gonna be good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so throw the rest of your onion, garlic, ginger. I've got some fresh turmeric. If you have fresh turmeric, throw that into your chicken pan or pot with the chicken schmaltz in it. Now I put a cup and a half of peanut butter in the recipe. That might be excessive. I think probably start with a cup and taste it, but we're not doing the peanut butter yet. Again, I was shrinking these recipes from giant to small, so I did my best to get a good mix. This is a favorite at the Co-op salad bar. It's very flavorful. It's, you know, a far removed African soup recipe. I don't claim any knowledge of African soups, but there is a groundnut stew that is kind of where I got the inspiration for this soup. So there's some delicious African food is some of my favorite foods. So get those aromatics sizzling. And then this soup is pretty simple. It just has the chicken and the greens. So once we get our aromatics to that soft, fragrant, starting to brown place, we'll pour in our broth. In the meantime, we can be chopping our greens. I think I put spinach in the recipe. I forget, did I say you can use whatever?
Yeah, I think you said spinach or any green.
Great. Great. Oh, go ahead and, oh, well, not quite yet. Yeah, so I bought these mustard greens that are grown locally at Calliope Farm. We were selling them at the co-op. And I think they're good. I've made the soup at work with mustard greens, and it adds kind of a depth of flavor. That the spinach is delicious, and but it doesn't add a lot of flavor. So I'm excited to see how a small batch goes with these gorgeous mustard greens. Yeah, you could use kale, you could use pretty much collards. I think I've used them all. And this soup could be blended or not. I usually don't blend it because people, customers at the co-op seem to like the chunkier soups more than the blended soups. So I usually just leave it chunky. It's good both ways. I'm gonna throw in the other half of my jalapeno to make it a little more spicy the way I like it. And now let's throw in our curry powder and salt and pepper. And then you're gonna get that wonderful smell. I love the fresh ground pepper. How do people like to eat their greens? Come on, I know some of you eat greens.
I think spinach and pancakes is a pretty good way to go.
the way to hide them.
I like sauteed greens.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sauteed greens.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like them just sauteed too. My family comes from, my mom's family comes from Louisiana, so greens for breakfast are a big tradition. Grits and greens and maybe some bacon or eggs.
Well, personally, I think soup is the best way to, especially if you garden and you have lots of greens, because kale kind of grows all year round. It's a great, you can throw kale or any other kinds of greens into almost any soup, really, or any stir fry. And it's just a great way to utilize them and add more green stuff to your diet. I would say in using, like in this recipe, if you're using spinach, you want to put it in more at the end so you don't cook it to death. But if you're using other kinds of greens like kale or collards or something like that, you want to put it in a little earlier so it has a little time to cook. But I think soup is a great way to use greens, whether it's in the recipe or not, mostly. I mean, depending.
Thank you, Beth. Very good information. And they're so good for you. They're just so full of things we need. All right, well, my aromatics are at the place where I'm gonna go ahead and add my broth. And again, I'm gonna add a couple cups of water, rinse out my broth container, get all the good sediment and fats from around the edge. You can always add more if you need to. Let's give our veggie soup a stir. Take a look at that. Ooh, mine's simmering away. Lovely. I just poked my my squash and it's soft. It just fell right apart. Mmm. All right, I'm a fan of the candy, Georgia candy roaster. And it's delicious. Thanks for sharing with me. How's your broth taste? So I'll sample the broth. And this is the part where we make any adjustments. Do we need more salt, more pepper, more green curry? Mine needs a little more salt. Now at work, this is the part where I would chop some cilantro, pour in well, a lot because I'm making a giant pot of lime juice because we're serving it as an already made soup. But at home, what you can do is you can squeeze your lime juice in as you eat it, put your fresh chopped cilantro on top, and that's how I eat it at home. I don't put it in, but you know, for the co-op, you're gonna be putting that stuff in ahead of time. So you can do either. How does everybody's taste? Are you tasting it? How's it tasting?
It's really good, Monica.
Like magic, huh?
Those are good ingredients.
Yeah, wait till you taste it with the lime and a little bit of cilantro. It's even better.
I'm excited.
That's a comfort soup. How's everybody else's taste?
It's really good. I like it.
I love the creaminess of the coconut milk. It adds such a richness to the soup.
I don't want to add more coconut milk to mine because I made it super duper spicy, but I also don't want it to get too liquid. I don't know. I'm trying to brainstorm.
You could skim the coconut cream off the top. Just throw that in there and save the milk for another recipe.
Cool. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah. Mine's not spicy enough, but the rest of the people that live here will be appreciative of that.
I find when I've made something a little too spicy or a little too something else, that when I refrigerate it and then rewarm it, it solidifies in the refrigerator a little bit, so it gets kind of thick. And then I can add, on my leftovers, I can add water or milk or something that thins it out a little at that point. And that helps reduce the spiciness, but not when it's fresh off the stove. It's kind of that leftover thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I found sort of a similar thing if you've put your leftovers in the fridge. If there was much fat in it, you don't disturb it, the fat will rise to the top. And a lot of times that spicy lives in the fat. And so you can take some of that fat off the top. I mean, I found it out that I removed the spice inadvertently. It's like, oh, but it was in the fat. So you can get rid of it, some of it that way. But again, it's gonna have to be cold and that fat will have to rise to the top.
That's a good point. Yeah, fat's where a lot of the flavor resides. So that's why we add like chicken or coconut milk or those kind of things, because it kind of binds the flavor in there. All right, how's everybody's chicken soup doing? Is it boiling? Mine's not quite boiling yet, but let's go ahead and shred our chicken or whatever you're using. I'm just going to take a fork and just kind of strip it so that it shreds soup style. Kind of break it apart with my fingers. This is usually where my dog comes begging for the skin. The bones are going to go in my stock bag. What are some of you all's favorite soup recipes or favorite soups?
Tortilla soup.
Yeah.
we love split pea soup. And I use the Instapot to do that all the time. It's great. And I buy pork shanks to flavor it.
Last night I made a sausage white bean minestrone.
I love white beans. They're so creamy and delicious.
Cannellini beans.
The soup I was planning to make for this class until I learned about the squash was a fresh pea soup that I love to make for the salad bar. It's a blended soup and it's quite unusual. I guess you'll have to take another one of my classes to learn that one. But it's fresh peas and lettuce and it's very quick. It's like kind of one of those like, I'm hungry now, I'll make that soups. It's vegan, it's, you know, onions and garlic and broth and peas and lettuce, and you let it get soft, you blend it, and then I like to drizzle a little heavy cream on top, and it's so good. It just tastes like summer in a bowl.
Is that a hot or a cold soup, Monica?
It's hot, although it probably tastes good cold too. All right, I've got my chicken shredded. It's going in the, oh, it's boiling. So I'm gonna go ahead and put in my chicken, a cup of peanut butter, and my greens all at once. Stir it really well, because once the peanut butter gets in there, it has a tendency to burn. It'll just go in some big clump. So stir it while it melts and melds into the soup. I'm using a crunchy peanut butter because it's kind of nice to have little bits of nuts. But if you don't like that, smooth works great. And I'll be very interested to hear how the tahini tastes. I know it'll be wonderful. I'm gonna add a little more water to mine because it's pretty thick. We did salt and pepper with the aromatics, right? Yes. All right, let's turn that down like medium low, let that simmer for a while, and then let's go ahead and sample our, go ahead and sit down and have a cup of our green curry, our green curry vegetable squash soup. Did I put the lime and cilantro? Yeah, I did put it in the recipe. I'm going to chop a little bit of cilantro. Sprinkle my cilantro on top. We're going to soup if you want. I'm going to squeeze in a quarter of a lime, an eighth of a lime, I guess it is. Bon appetit. Mmm. Anybody else trying theirs? Fazia?
I didn't make it today because I woke up with a really bad headache and I wasn't in the mood to cook, but I've been watching you and writing things down.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Mmm.
Now I wished I had cooked with you because it looks so good.
It's so
Next
good.
time I will.
That squash is amazing. It's so sweet. Elijah, how's yours?
It's delicious. Yep. I used the yellow curry paste.
Oh,
Can we see what it looks like in the bowl?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yummy.
Try to do it without pouring it onto my computer.
Yeah, I can see it. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Big chunks of squash that are just so soft and really good. Carly, how's yours?
It's really good.
Mm.
Lime and cilantro really finish it off nice.
Yeah, it needs it. It needs that acid.
Monica, I bought a sample of the carrot ginger soup from the co-op yesterday. Did you make that?
No, Siobhan made that.
I'm going to have that for lunch today.
Yeah, it's a beautiful soup. I love the color.
Yeah.
How is it? Em?
Oh, me? Yes. Oh, sorry. Who are you asking?
It's really good.
I'm watching everybody and the people that are They're eating it.
My roommates say hello.
Nice. It's enough to share, that's for sure. How is it with the yellow curry paste? That sounds delicious as well.
It's great. Yeah.
Yes, my happy soup dance.
I also did red curry and it's very good because that's just what I had.
I believe it. Okay. My chicken soup is looking done. How's everybody else's looking? Add a little more salt to mine. A little more pepper. This is the time to adjust. This soup can be eaten as is, or you can also put a little squirt of lime in there if that's to your flavor. Oh yeah. I'm gonna dip up some of my chicken soup. This is what it looked. Oh, ouch! It's very hard to show it without spilling it. This is what it looks like. Ooh.
Yeah, I can see it.
Can you see it?
Yes, just almost.
Almost. Let's see. Well, here, I'll take some up in the spoon. So it's got the greens and the shredded chicken in there. And the sauce is like a rich, the peanut butter thickens it up a bit. You can add more peanut butter to taste. You can add more curry, salt and pepper. I just love that combination of flavors. And the mustard greens did add a little depth of flavor to the soup.
I am definitely going to make the chicken peanut one.
It's very good. Who else
Well,
made
thank
it?
you.
Who else has their chicken ready to taste?
Very good. Not quite as elegant as the vegetable, but it's good.
To define elegant.
Just not as full bodied.
Oh. Hold on, let me deal with the dog. Be quiet. You might try adding a little more curry, a little more peanut butter, squeeze a lime.
Yeah, I didn't add any lime. Would be good.
Soups are so good. What other folks think about the chicken soup?
It's good. I think I would, if I made it again, I would put a little less peanut butter. I put 1 cup. But it's good.
Well, that's the way. Adjust it to the way you like it. Anyone else? Yeah, nice.
I was wondering how the mustard greens, was it mustard greens you got, worked out in place of the spinach?
They're really good. They're they added a little depth of flavor, a little bitterness, which I like. I love the bitter greens. I think they go really well in this soup. Probably not every soup because they're a strong flavor, but this soup is, well, you know, indelicate enough, inelegant enough to take, you know, a variety of different things. That it's a very earthy soup.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we did it in our allotted time. So that is exciting. 2 soups. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I was amazed.
Me
I was
too.
amazed by that. I wasn't sure you could do 2 in the 2-hour time slot, but wow, this is great.
Well, thanks for the applause. You know, timing is what it's all about with cooking. You know, you can't just cook one thing then cook another thing. You gotta have, you know, something in the oven and something on the burner and chopping, and you know, so it's something that comes with practice, and a lot of you probably already have that down, but it's a big part of cooking. Does anybody have any questions or comments or more wisdom to share about cooking?
Monica, I'm just amazed how this whole program, you know, we can see it in real time and everybody's making their soups and eating it. So I'm just, you know, amazed at what we can do now, even though we cannot have classes in person. It's very interesting. I never thought I would hook onto this, but I am.
Yeah. Thank you, Fazia. I agree that it's a whole new way of interacting, but there are a lot of things I appreciate about it. It's fun to be in a room with people and tasting things and chatting, and this is definitely second best to that. But you know, it's nice to be in our own kitchens where we know where everything is, and it is.
Yeah, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Our next class is on, I want to say February 8th. And it's one of our collective members, Erin Majors, and she's going to be preparing a vegetarian meal. And you think 2 soups is a big order. She's also got a 2-hour class. So that's is it next week or is it a couple weeks?
Couple weeks.
Yeah, so it's on a Tuesday night. Create a special vegetarian meal, and she's got like 4 things that she's cooking, and they look really good. I'm gonna be putting the recipes on her page soon. So take a look at that. One of the things is like a puff pastry pie, which I'm really excited about because I want to learn how to use puff pastry better. It seems like a really good, quick way to make pies, and it's delicious. So feel free to join that. They're all free. And this is the, you know, we had to, of course, cancel so many things due to the pandemic. So this is the reinvigorating of our community classes, and it's very exciting.
Will you be sending out the list of those classes again? I only signed up for the one because I thought, well, I'm going to try it, and I wanted to see you about it because I haven't seen you in ages.
So nice to see you.
But I would like to sign up for the others now that I see how this works.
Sure. would be happy to do that. I knew it was going to work out okay because I took a cooking class with one of my favorite chefs. My daughter lives in Philadelphia, and there's a restaurant there called Zahav, and it's amazing Middle Eastern food. And so he was doing a cooking class. My daughter signed me up for it, and it was over Zoom. It was at the beginning of the pandemic. It was in 2020. And it was so much fun, all of us cooking. I had a little fangirl moment. He said, "Show me your charred eggplant." And I held mine up, and he's like, "Very nice, Monica." So I knew it could work, and it's just a delight to have you all here and cook together.
Well, thank you very much, and see you again at the co-op. Bye now.
Thank you, Fazia. Thanks for joining.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you,
Take care.
Bill.
Enjoyed it.
I'm glad you came. Nice to meet you.
Just want to thanks to all the community members who joined us. Beth, you're at the top of my screen right now. I loved all the little gems of wisdom you put out there. It was really, really fun. And again, apologies. I had computer issues, as did many students. So Monica, thank you for your graciousness.
Well, we're gonna, if this all works out technologically, we're going to put this on our website. So I could also, does anybody want a copy of the recording? If, like I say, if this all works out.
I would like you to send a copy to me, and I'll be sure that Chelsea gets it. And while I'm there, I want to ask you, the next time you see her, please give her a big hug from her mama. I haven't been able to hug her for a while.
I haven't seen her in a while either, so I would be happy to do that. I'm sure we're both vaccinated and boosted, and
oh yes, she is as well.
Great. Any other?
Just one last thing for Evergreen students. Monica, I think I'm going to need to do release forms for all students who participated today. If you could hold out to make this public until we get those in place, because I think I have that legal obligation. So my Evergreen students, I will be in touch with you. Please check your email. I think we do need that written release before this can be made public, given that we ran through state resources with this.
That sounds great. I have a co-op release form. Would you prefer to use that?
If you'd send that to me, and then I'll check with the authorities, because I don't know what I have to do, but I know I have to do something.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you could just hold on and not release it until we have that. And a shout out. I love seeing all of you in your kitchens working. This to me was a delight. So thanks to both community members and Evergreen students for showing up. I loved it.
Thank you, Sarah. Any final? Yeah. Go ahead. Maybe that was an echo. Any final words of wisdom, cooking lore?
I was just curious about how many of these participants are students and how many aren't. I bet, I guess, was it like, I don't know, 20 or mostly?
About a dozen.
Huh, cool.
Yep, 12 today were students. So a beautiful blend.
Modern home ec.
Exactly. Radical home ec.
Yeah. Oh, there's some great comments. You might want to look at those.
If only home ec could have been this fun when I was in school.
Exactly. Yeah, we are doing a final class with the TASTE program. At the, gosh, it's a couple, I think it's in March.
Yeah, week 8. So that is the 23rd of February.
Oh, at the end of February. So we'll be using more of this delicious food that they grew. Elijah, did you have a question? No.
Okay, last one for Evergreen students who need to document your work. Probably everybody's got this down, but in case not, whatever your screenshot command is, I think we have Monica's permission and everyone's by nature of having agreed to the recording, that one way you can grab your own images in your own kitchen. And if there's anything on the screen that you want to grab, figure out how to do a screenshot, which will then save as a photo to your whatever device you're using. And then you can upload that to your OneDrive to document your work for today. Any questions on how to do screenshots?
Will photos also work for that if we took photos of the soup making process?
Absolutely. Yes, of course. And you can, of course, do your own shot of what's on the screen. But if you want to, if there's anything on the screen you want to capture, you could use screen captures as well as pictures of your own kitchen and your own lab. Both things are fantastic options.
So Elijah, I consider a soup that makes your nose run to be perfection.
Totally.
I love that.
Especially in January.
Yeah, exactly. I love that heat and how it clears out your sinuses.
Thanks, Carly and Susan. We've got a question. How do you do a screenshot on a, oops, thank you. Carly's got it. I'm a Mac user, so Adele is a key shift S. We're good?
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Carly.
See you next
Bye.
time.
No problem. Bye. Thank you,
Bye.
Monica.
Thank you, Monica. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you all.